Why did that crack? Or not crack?
Because you get to see all my mistakes.
Oh, it was cardboard.
Alright, so fire development. All fires go through 4 stages. They go through what's called ignition, when you first start the fire up. Then we get a period of growth, when it starts to find all the fuel that it can find and burn. It starts to get bigger. And then it finds all its fuel, and we get to a flat line. This is where it's just burning fuel. And then finally, when the fuel starts to go away, we get what's called decay. All fires follow this cycle. There is no fire that won't follow this cycle. Now, my question for you, can you bounce from one cycle to another, or one part of the stage to another part of the stage? What do you think?
Yeah.
Sure. If your fire starts to decay, what do you add to it? Fuel, and then that causes it to grow, and then you reach the flat line again, right? The only stage you can't go back to is ignition. You can go back and forth between growth, decay, and fully developed or flatline the entire time. Gee, I wonder why. Flashover. So this is something that firefighters fear a lot. And it happens in both home fires and in forest fires. This occurs when all of the fuel that's around reaches what's called auto-ignition. It's a temperature where as soon as oxygen touches that fuel, it catches on fire. And it can happen without warning, or you can find a warning if you know what signs to look for. All firefighters fear this because when it starts, there's literally no getting out. You have to hope and pray. So here's a little video. Wow, that's good. This is a flashover. So, this was a house fire in Michigan, and there are people just standing outside. They're trying to fight it right now. In a few minutes, you're going to see the smoke change color, volume, velocity, and density.
I know what all those mean.
Good. You're also going to see the firefighters start to recognize that this house is done for, there's no saving it. So you're going to see people start to leave the house as well. Now you see the firefighters are leaving right now because they know there's nothing that they can do. There's the first flash. You're going to see the whole house go up in a second. So everything just caught on fire like that. We're not going to slow it down. So you saw the smoke got really, really dark. It started pouring out a lot. That was a signal to the firefighters that, okay, the temperature in here is getting so hot that everything's going to start to catch on fire. So at that point, you saw all the firefighters leave the house. They had enough warning that they could get out. But there are times when you don't. It's why I recommend everybody carries one of these. Does anybody know what these are?
Fire blanket.
It's not a fire blanket.
Fireproof suit.
Yeah,
It's a solar blanket.
kind of. It's an emergency blanket. Space blanket, it's also what it's called. When they're folded up, they're only this big. Which is why when you guys get your licenses and you have your own car, keep one of these in the car because they're very, very useful.
What do they do?
I'm going to tell you. So, that little box becomes something like this. Well, this one's a poncho, but that one would be a blanket. If you look at this, the material isn't all that thick. It's very thin, but what is it? It's reflective. It's like a metal. It's like a foil. Why would you want a blanket that's reflective? Well, it keeps the heat from a fire away from you, right? But what else will it do? Yeah?
Does it like reflect the heat?
It will reflect your body heat back into you and keep you warm. Absolutely. These are lifesavers, especially in forest fires. All forest firefighters have one of these on them because if they get caught in a flashover, there's nowhere they can run. Instead, they put this on, or they have one like this that they can quickly get underneath. And then what are they trapping in with them so that they can breathe? Oxygen, absolutely. Now, how much protection do you think this is going to offer? Not a lot, but it could be the difference between life and death. It could give you enough time so that you can breathe and somebody can find you, and so that the fire, if it's flashing over, it's going to go fast, and hopefully it will go past you so you can get out. Little device to save a life. All right, so that was shifting more out of house fires and fires in general to forest fires. And we have what's called the fire triangle when we are talking about forest fires. There are three factors that we look at. We look at fuel, what's available, is the fuel dry? We look at the weather, is it windy, was there lightning, did it rain recently? And we look at the topography. What's topography?
I don't know.
Nobody knows what topography is?
Elevation.
What did you say?
Like elevation.
Elevation. How's the ground laid out? Are there hills? Is it a plain? Do you have a mountain that's going up? Things like that. So, fuels. One of the things that we look for first is what's called a ladder fuel. Let's say you're out in the woods with your tent. You can build a campfire, you and your friends. What do you want to try to avoid when you're building that fire? What areas? Yep.
Burning everything else down.
Well, you don't want to burn the entire place down. Yep. Entirely wooded areas. Actually, a wooded area isn't all that bad. Well, most of the time, if you're in a completely wooded area, the trees are going to be tall enough that the embers are going to go out before they hit the tree. When you're making a fire, like if your parents decide to do a bonfire in the backyard, or you're just having a little campfire, you want to try to avoid low-lying brush and things of that nature. Because fire can spread easily. And humans have this tendency to do symmetry. We like things to go from little to big or big to little, right? So a lot of houses will be landscaped with small stuff in the front, bigger stuff behind it, bigger stuff behind that, and then the trees in the back. Well, that's unfortunate because that can act as a ladder for fire. It will allow it to just climb up and catch onto whatever is there. And that's what's called a ladder fuel. So the fire reaches low-lying shrub, which reaches maybe a little tree, which reaches a bigger tree, and makes a staircase for the fire to jump up. Ladder fuels are one of the most common ways for fires to gain strength. So if you have a campfire, try to keep it away from small, low-lying stuff. The next thing we look at is the topography. Fires move uphill. Why do you think fires move uphill? Yeah?
Because heat rises and stuff.
Absolutely, because heat rises. So fires move uphill. And what do you think? If something heats up, is it easier to catch on fire or harder to catch on fire?
Easier.
Easier, absolutely. So, fires move much faster uphill than they do on level ground. They also have longer and hotter flames, and it's because heat rises, so the gases in front of the fire are already hotter and ignite that much easier. So we look at topography. And the last thing is weather conditions. What's the biggest factor you think? Wind, absolutely. Why do you think wind's the big factor? Yep. Not because it can spread the embers, but it does do that.
Because you can't ignite.
Because
You can't ignite, you couldn't start the fire.
You couldn't start the fire if there's no oxygen. What does the wind provide?
A lot of
Oxygen. It blows oxygen into a fire. So wind is a major factor determining both the intensity of the fire and the direction it goes, because it will spread the embers as well. Next thing we look at is humidity. What is humidity?